What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy, back again with another video. Today, let's take a look at the Kashtira deck. As we all know, the ban list just dropped, and with it are a plethora of playable decks, given that tier are now finally neutered into the ground. But the deck that's on everyone's mind, first and foremost, is probably the Kashtira deck, because we know this deck is really, really powerful. It did some good performance in the OCG, and now we have this at full power with Photon Hypernova. So with the new ban list, I think this is kind of what I had put together from a glance. It's kind of nice because previously this deck had to play cards like Necro Valley and maybe side deck cards like Defissure or Macrocosmos in order to combat the tier matchup, because it wasn't as good as you would think. Even though we have a walking Macrocosmos, the tier deck was just so oppressive that they were actually able to get rid of it with cards like Super Polymerization, Lava Golem, Book of Eclipse, so on and so forth. Meaning, as long as they were able to play, their engine was essentially way better than the Kashtira one. But now with tier gone, we don't really have to make those concessions anymore. We don't really have to play cards like Necro Valley or even main deck D-Shifter. We can just play like standard Kashtira with a bunch of good cards. So I was thinking to play around the 9-hand traps, 3 Nib, 3 Ash, 3 Imperum. I think it's good enough. I think Nib is really, really powerful right now, especially against the Kashtira deck. That'll probably be one of the most represented decks. And it's also decent against other decks like Despia, like Branded. They're still going to make like a bunch of summons, and this can somewhat nuke their board a little bit, get rid of the Mirror Jade. Maybe they can summon it back, but their board's going to be a little weaker, I would think. I don't know exactly what the end board is on that deck, but I'm just, given theory, I think Nibiru is good enough to play in the main deck right now just because of how good it is against the Kashtira deck. And it's also good against other matchups. People are playing like Tri Brigade. If they don't use like Gigantic Sprite before their 5th summon, this could really come in handy. So yeah, we're just playing, 3 Fenrir, 3 Unicorn, only 2 Rise Heart. I know a lot of people are playing 3, but for me, it's kind of like one of those cards that, because this deck is already so consistent, we have 3 of everything essentially. There's always going to be a way for you to search it, and I feel like it doesn't really make sense to play 3 because the odds of you drawing 2 or more combo pieces is pretty bad in this deck. Generally going first, you want to draw a maximum of 2, so like a Kashtira monster plus any other name or extender, so you can make the full board with the A-Rise Heart plus the Shangri-La locking 3 zones, and then the Mind Hacker having banished a bunch of cards, as well as banishing one of your opponent's extra deck monsters. But you can also do that with 1 Unicorn. You can still make the A-Rise Heart and the Shangri-La. Just A-Rise Heart's not going to have 3 materials, which is still fine. But then the other 4 cards, if you have more defensive options, in my opinion, that's a lot better because you can protect that board and then win that way. Whereas if you get like multiple names, let's say you draw like 3 names, some combination of Fenrir, A-Rise Heart, and like Unicorn, at least one of those are going to be dead and just chilling in your hand. It doesn't really do anything. So I think like minimizing on the chances of that happening is a little better. That's why I think like 2 Rise Heart is a little bit better for now. And same kind of deal with 1 Scareclaw Kashtira, 1 Tearlaments Kashtira. You really only need one or the other in order to fulfill your entire combo with the 3 material A-Rise Heart. But I think Kashtira, Scareclaw is nice that you can attack in defense mode. If some random deck happens to be playing Baluska, you can easily get rid of it. And then we are playing the Adventure package. I think this is just really good going into a blind metagame because it's just so good against random decks. It's good against cards that are prevalent in the face of a new format like Nibiru. A lot of people might be main decking that. It's also good against other cards like Lancia or like Chaos Hunter. People might be siding it against the deck. So having to bait that early, like as soon as you add Griffin, they kind of have to either shotgun the Lancia or do something along those lines is always good. So you know what your opponent's doing, and then you can tutor your play around that after they've done it early. So it's kind of nice to have the Water Enchantress. I mean, I guess if they have Lancia, they might just shotgun it on your turn. But let's say they don't, or they have another card. I just think this is really great for dealing with cards. It's just a 1-for-1 negate. It baits out a lot of things, and it protects your board. And Griffin Rider having to be level 7, it's also quite relevant. If you draw this, it's not as much of a brick as you would think it is because you can just overlay with it. And then we're just playing Faithful and Draco back, just generic removal, 2 Birth, because that's really all you need. This is just like a search target off of Unicorn. Who knows? Maybe you could even get away with playing 1, but I just like how you have the option to normal summon one of your names. So if you are locked under something like a Book of Eclipse or a Book of Moon or something, this allows you to continue playing as well as having that reborn effect. So it's always good on the follow-up. 3 Kashtira Teosis. So this is a new card that allows you to special summon a different name than the Kashtira you target on your board. But it does have the restriction where you cannot special summon from the extra deck except for XYZ monsters for the rest of the turn. So it's kind of annoying. There is a little bit of counter confliction with the Water Enchantress, because I know Cherubini can actually dump it, but that doesn't really happen as often. You know, you can go to Cherubini with Draco Sack, but your hand has to be like really good, because the first and foremost, you have to do that before you activate Theosis, and then you have to have access to Theosis after that to do the rest of your Kashtira combo. So it doesn't really come up as much as I would think it would in testing, but I think it's still good enough that you should be playing it. And obviously, when this card is banished, you can target one of your banished Kashtira cards, accept itself, and add it to your hand. So when you have this under your Arise Heart, it's always really good because you can detach 3 to banish a card face down, and then on the new chain, you can use Theosis to add back any Kashtira monster that was banished. So any other Kashtira card that you detached from Rise Heart. So it's really, really good recursion. 2 Pot of Prosperity. This is a really good card, I think, just for digging for your pieces. I don't really want to play 3 because I feel like the decks are really fragile, delicate. Every card kind of counts in a deck like this because you want to protect your board, but the metagame is strong enough that a lot of decks can actually break through when you just have an Arise Heart chilling there with like a Fenrir. So you want to have like protective options, defensive options, as well as follow-up, and then it just taps into your engine a little more. I feel like playing 3 sometimes, if you break on 2 of them, it's just like one less card you have to play. So I wouldn't recommend maxing out on them, but I could be wrong. Give it a try, let me know. 3 Parasos as well as a Terraforming, no-brainer. You're just searching any of your engine or like an extender if you have to, or a toolbox, like Scareclaw, Kashtira if you got to get rid of a Baguska. 3 Rite of Aramis-Here to go with the Adventures. The Adventures is really experimental. It's theoretically a huge chunk of the deck. It's like 9 cards, so if you're the meta shapes up or your local meta is a little different, it might be better to play cards that are more tailored towards decks that are popular in the format. So things like more hand traps, maybe some more traps, maybe tech cards like Forbidden Lance or whatever. People are main decking Book of Eclipse, right? So even maybe main decking Book of Eclipse for the mirror match. So it really depends, but I think Adventure is really good going into a blind metagame where we don't really know what's good. Adventure being an Omni, Negate, as well as a removal is just good against everything that people could throw at you in the format. And same sort of deal with Imperm, to go with the 9 hand traps. And the Kashtira Big Bang is a 1-up because you need it for your combo in order to special summon one of your Fenrirs that you detach. And then also have this as follow-up. When it's attached to Rise Heart, on their turn, you can detach it and then special summon another name or add it back to your hand. So with Theosis, you get a +2 just from that interaction from having it attached to a Rise Heart and then managed later on. Now, the reason we're sliding D-Shifter is because I don't think that a lot of graveyard decks will be prevalent as much as, people are playing Kashtira. I think that'll be more popular, and Dimensional Shifter does absolutely nothing in the mirror match. So, again, we talked about the deck being really fragile and wanting every card to count in a deck like this because it's more or less an anti-meta deck. Like, we're making an explosive turn 1, but our cards inherently are like anti-meta deck cards. We're stopping the opponent, we're banishing cards, we're also like removing them, we're using cards to pick off their board one by one and then just whittling them down with big beaters. So every card counts in a deck like this where you don't really have a super combo off one card. You're just kind of grinding away. You have Unicorn to add Birth to follow up, but that's really all you have. So I think having Shifter as a side deck option is better because we don't want to go to the mirror match with a dead card in our hand. Book of Eclipse is also for the mirror. Actually, there's a lot of things in the mirror. I think Book of Eclipse is really good for booking their monsters face down, but this deck sometimes has some trouble dealing with boards. That's where the adventure stuff comes in as well. We can bounce some things back. We can also make a Zeus, which is one of our other power plays, but then after the Zeus, we have to be able to play beyond that. Like a Zeus isn't going to do much on its own, so we want to be able to continue playing. So that's why Book of Eclipse might not be as good in this deck as cards like Change of Heart and Mind Control, which I think are really good in the mirror match because you just take the Arise Heart and then you either overlay your own Arise Heart on top of that if they've activated their Shangri-La in your standby phase, because that's all it takes is if Kashtira Shangri-La activated its effect this turn, including your opponent's Kashtira Shangri-La, you can overlay this on top of an Arise Heart. So you can steal that. Maybe Enemy Controller is another option. You can also just steal a Rise Heart and just make a Zeus and you slam and then you make a Zeus and you blow up the board. So I think these cards are really good. And they pair really well with Triple Tactics Tasking because of the fact that a Rise Heart is a mandatory effect. So if they make like a Rise Heart on your turn, you kind of bait out the effect to banish something, you can instantly activate a Triple Tactics Tasking, add either Mind Control or Change of Heart, and then take control of it. Same sort of deal with Triple Tactics Talent. This is another card that you can steal or draw to or rip your opponent's hand. And I just think Tasking is really, really versatile for that. Another card you can search is Evenly Matched. And another card I would actually recommend, maybe seeing if you can slot in here, is Harpy's Feather Duster, because there might be the existence of trap decks like Labyrinth, and that just being searchable is really, really nice. And then 3 Solemn Judgment. This is the only card going first. So you could also side Book of Eclipse going first in the mirror match, maybe, but I don't know. It's not really recommended because it also books your own monsters, so maybe something like Book of Moon may be better. But Solemn Judgment, being able to stop enemy Book of Eclipses, being able to stop their plays is really, really important. It's just a bit of a gamble because if they're siding cards like Nib, then Judgment's not as good because you might not be able to make your board. So just bear that in mind. Nibiru is a card going into Game 2 and Game 3, trying to play conservatively, see if you can play around that and then still be able to make a Rise Heart because that's the thing you want to end on more than anything. And then extra deck's fairly standard. 2 Zeus, because it does come up in the grind game. 2 Arise Heart, 2 Shangri-La. All these are coming up on your follow-up. Draco Sack, because you can spawn tokens, you can pop a card, or you can actually use the 2 tokens as level 3s to make a Cherubini in order to go into your adventure play. Doesn't really come up that often, especially on turn 1, because you are going into your plays with Teosis and maybe Rise Heart, so you lock yourself out of the extra deck other than XYZ monsters immediately. But it could come up in the grind game. You never know, right? Having access to your adventure is always really good if you can do it in engine. And then Big Eye for stealing something is just really, really powerful because the monster still doesn't get its effects negated either. And then Mind Hacker, generic. Flare Metal is really good, especially in time. Your opponent has to pay 500 for every card they activate, so it's very good at putting pressure on the board. And then this can also not be destroyed by card effects while it has material, so that's something to remember as well. It cannot be popped. Also, it's just good for the mirror match. Summon back like their enemy Fenrir's or any large earth monsters that you could think of. Blackluster Soldier of Chaos is a really, really good one, especially against decks that don't have answers to this. Obviously, Mirror Jade is going to be popular in the format, so that's an easy answer to this card. But when this card is link summoned using a level 7 or higher monster as material, which is really easy because all our monsters essentially are, and we have easy recursion with Kashtira Birth and the adventure stuff, so we can get a bunch of monsters onto the board at the same time. And this can use tokens as well. It just has to be 3 monsters with different names. And if this monster is link summoned by using a level 7 or higher monster, it cannot be destroyed by card effects or targeted by card effects. So it's like a Dragoon, essentially. And then when you destroy a monster by battle, it goes up to 4,500 attack. So it basically can't be destroyed by battle by anything other than an Axis Code Talker randomly. And then from there, you can just control the game. There are a lot of decks that are unprepared for this card. I was literally going to play it in my Tearlaments deck. We were going to play it in our Tearlaments deck pre-ban list because the Tearlaments mirror, they don't really have anything to get rid of it other than Zeus. And you can just stop their Zeus, and then they're out of options. Like in this deck, you can rip their Zeus out of the extra deck, and then they might not have an answer to Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. So it's a really nice thing to have. Cherubini, as we mentioned, Dark randomly. I don't know. I guess you shouldn't actually play Dark because there's no Darks. I don't know. I have this in here, but you guys can maybe find something else. Maybe it's another copy of Arise Heart or something else, but something that meshes well with this deck. Something that would work well in a toolbox slate, which comes. Next card, which kind of comes up, is Donner Dagger for Hire. This is another toolbox thing. It's essentially a generic link too that allows you to pop itself and another card on that your opponent controls. So it's just generic removal, right? Like this deck, we just want to have options in our toolbox engine. We have a lot of extra deck space because our main combos are revolving around the Kashtira and maybe Zeus. So it's like we have a lot of space to play other cards. So definitely let me know if you guys have any suggestions on this deck. So I'll show you guys really quick combo actually now that I think of it. This is a play that I did. Or they're just drawing a generic hand. We have access to adventure, so we're going to summon out Unicorn. Summon out Unicorn is really important. Just remember to do that before you activate the token for right, because then you can't special summon Unicorn. We have to have no monsters. The Unicorn's going to just add Teosis. Teosis is going to activate to spawn a Fenrir from the deck, and then we're going to activate the effect of Faithful. Just going to add the Draco back here. Use the effect just to add the Griffin generic adventure plays. Discard the Draco back, re-equipped itself. Use Wandering Griffin Rider, special summon itself, so we're protected from Nibiru. Use the effect of Fenrir just to add Rise Heart here, and then from here we're off to the races with the rest of our combo. Going to use Rise Heart's effect after we summon the Shangri-La. Make sure you summon the Shangri-La first so we can lock an extra zone. Going to put it in the extra deck just so we have more space. Use the effect to banish Big Bang. Your opponent banishes the top 3. We go Chainlink 1, Shangri-La to lock a zone, and then Chainlink 2, Big Bang to detach a material, add it to the hand, and then special summon it if we choose to, which we will. So we can get another body on board, so special summon back to Fenrir. All of this is still off 1 card, except for the adventure, so it's kind of crazy. It's off 1 unicorn. You're doing the entire Kashtira combo, and then from here, we're going to use a Rise Heart to overlay. It's always important that you do this first, so we have the mandatory effect to attach materials, because we do want 3 materials as soon as possible, so his effect's live. And here I'm going to activate the terraforming. This is why we kind of held the terraforming. It's because when we didn't really need it to start our plays. We already had the names at the beginning. We had Unicorn. But now being able to activate terraforming, after we have Rise Heart on the field, it gets banished. So we can attach it back as an extra material. This is really important. The sequencing matters. So we're going to attach the Big Bang here. Now that terraforming got banished because a Rise Heart has the Macrocosmos effect. So now we get an extra material. Gonna activate the field spell now just to add our our extender so we can go forward with this play and allow us to do the Mind Hacker and then get a Rise Heart to 3+ materials. Gonna get the Kashtira Telements, gonna banish the Teosis. Of course, this is gonna trigger the A Rise Heart, so we're gonna be able to add back the Teosis as a material, which is really, really important because having Big Bang and Teosis later on when it gets banished during their turn means that we give to add back up to 2 Kashtira cards. One from our banished and then one from our XYZ material. So we're going to overlay. Actually made a mistake here. Not going to use Griffin. We're not going to play it on the nib. We're actually going to use the Kashtira Telements and then the Rise Heart instead to make the Mind Hacker misclicks. Whoopsie-doo. Going to use this effect to banish one of their extra deck monsters, and then on a new chain, we're going to activate the effective Rise Heart because it's mandatory, so it would be Chain Link 1. And then we're going to also activate Mind Hacker as well as Shangri-La to lock another zone. So we're going to lock a zone. And then on a new chain, Diabolos is going to banish more cards equal to the amount of face down that they have already banished. So we're going to banish up to 8 now, I believe it is, because we had 3 off Rise Heart, 1 off the extra deck, and then, yeah, another 4. So that's 8 banished cards, 7 from the main deck. And then Shangri-La is going to go ahead and activate and banish, or rather lock that last zone. So we're locking 3 zones. And then on their standby phase, we're going to special summon a Fenrir with the effect of Shangri-La. So we have several points of interaction here. We have the A-Rise Heart as one. We have the Fenrir as another, being able to banish a face-up card on the resolution of an opponent's monster effect. And then we have an Omni Negate in the form of Griffin Rider, as well as a large board that they have to deal with. And then we have follow-up in the form of Big Bang and Teosis. So if we detach Fenrir, Big Bang, and Teosis, we're going to be able to build a plethora of chain links, starting off with the Big Bang to add back the Unicorn, potentially special summon it as a defensive option, and also be able to rip another extra card, or just add it back to our hand. And then Teosis will allow you to add back a banished Kashtira card, which would all be banished when you activate the effect that detaches a cost because Rise Heart's still on the table. So that just gives you follow-up. And then on your following turn, you can add another, you can activate the other right. You can start summoning Fenrir. You can start making the same plays again if your opponent happens to break that board. So that's all I had for the video. If you guys have any cool combos, definitely let me know because I'm pretty new to this deck as well. But this is just a generic combo that you will be seeing in this upcoming metagame. So definitely make sure you're prepared for it. If you're playing cards like Book of Eclipse, Nibiru, so on and so forth, just make sure that you have the adventure cards in mind and then how to stop them, because this will be a popular point of interaction that you have to deal with, given that it stops Nibiru and a lot of the popular cards like Book of Eclipse that are sided against this deck in the metagame. So yeah, let me know in the comments, subscribe and like if you guys haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.